Bienvenidos, Ushamdid, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course, and in this lab, 4.5.5, we're now going to start diving in to explore REST APIs with API Simulator and Postman. Now, this is a fantastic lab, but let me say right up front, what you're going to learn is specific to the DEVASC Virtual Machine in this course. So you might pick a few things up here, but if you don't have the DEVASC Virtual Machine and you're not taking this course, this is probably not the lab for you. So let's go ahead though and dive in and let's see what we're going to be working with here on the virtual machine. So if I was to display the desktop, you can see we have the Chromium web browser right here. If you were to double click on that, it's going to go ahead, and I've actually already opened the tab up because we're going to be using the sort of baked in library.demo.local API simulator. And we're going to take a look at the documentation and make our way around here. And so you can see we've got a number of books if I was to click refresh. So these are the books that we have. And again, it's just sort of simulating a library. Now, once we're connected here, we want to go ahead and go to the API documentation page. And you can see it. Are you a developer? We have APIs. Click here for API docs. Now, the reason that I have MapQuest up along with the local library is I'm going to kind of sort of do these in conjunction with each other. Because take a look. MapQuest has a documentation page for the developer.mapquest.com. Now remember, you should have already created an account here at MapQuest. If you have not, now is the time to do that. And when you get logged in, you would click on documentation. Now, their documentation is going to contain much more information than we're going to see. But again, let's take a look at the APIs they have here. What about the directions API? Okay, well, here's some information about the directions API. So there's a get, there's a post, and I'll talk about the differences between post, put, patch as we make our way through here, because those seem to always cause the most confusion. But MapQuest has a developer API page as well for their API. And let's go back to the school library. So if we want to get to the school library's API, we have to click here. It would have been nice. I was hoping that you could just click anywhere in here, but you literally have to hover over click. And this does cause some confusion initially if learners are not familiar with this site. So we'll click on here. And just like the MapQuest page, you can see that we end up here in the default namespace, right? As you see, API v1 default namespace. So from the default namespace, you'll notice we've got this down arrow here, so I can collapse everything, right? And we've got credentials. We could take a look at that, right? Or I could just simply click anywhere in here. Oops, sorry, and click on the credentials arrow there, and it's going to drop it back. So let's drop this back down, though. And you'll notice here the authorize, the lock is sort of, it looks like it's unlocked, or it's like the lock is broken. And it's interesting because you'll see we're going to be using a token to do some work in here, and it'll change the lock to make it look as if it's completely locked, but it's in that state that we actually have success with our API call. So let's go ahead and continue to take a look at the documentation here. So you can see we've got a GET request, a POST request, delete, a PUT. And so let's click on GET. So what can we do by looking at the documentation here and figure out, hey, okay, well, what are the options I have? Well, I can include the ISBN, and it's just a Boolean value, right? It's either true or false. We're either including the ISBN number or not. The default is false. Sort by, and we can sort by some kind of a string here. Now, the default is just to sort by the book ID, and you'll see what that value is here in a second. Then we've got an author string, right? So return only books by the given author, and then you've got a page, right? So you can save resources and bandwidth, and you could cut this down into a smaller group of pages. So let's click try it out and let's see what's going on here. Now here is where execute is. So it's going to ask you to go ahead and click execute. Now once I click try it out, you'll see the locks, right? We don't need an authorization token to do a GET request. To do a post or a delete or a put, we do, right? But the GET is not going to require a key, which is why we can simply click on try it out. And if I wanted to, I could change some of these fields here and say, yeah, let's sort by ISBN number, right? But we're going to leave it blank for right now. We're going to click on execute. And here's what we see. So this API, right, that we're using via a web interface is going to show me the HTTP response code of 200. That's what we're looking for, not a 401 or a 404 or any other response. We're looking for the 200, which means success. And we can see that it's also going to provide us with, the curl command that could be used in order to execute this request, which is what we're getting ready to do here in just a second. We're going to copy this curl request, and then we're going to run it in our CLI in a terminal window. But here's the response body. Again, we've asked for it in application JSON format. I could ask for it in XML. I could ask for it, and let's do that. So if I say XML and click execute, there's the output in XML. If I say give it to me in YAML, because maybe I'm going to use that YAML.safe_loads method in order to convert it at a later time. And here is the output in YAML format. And again, every time I change the data representation format that I would like the data presented to me in, we end up getting a different curl command. And you can see in here, it says application YAML, right? Application XML. And so it changes in the curl command, and we get a different response body. But we're interested in JSON, and that's really where our focus is going to be. Now, this is a great example that I had commented on earlier, where in some cases, the API that you're interfacing with, and again, we're interfacing with the library demo local API. In some cases, the API that you're working with is going to return a JSON array. And that is a JSON array. Remember, the brackets in Python are referred to as a list. But with the JSON data, it's an array. And this array has a number of elements. That's the first element, right, which is a dictionary that just simply has key value pairs. And then you have a comma right there to separate the first element in the list from the next element in the list. And the next element in the list just happens to be another dictionary with key value pairs. And these key value pairs for each dictionary is just simply representing the book, the ID number of the book, the title of the book, and the author of the book. Again, we didn't ask for the ISBN numbers here, so it's not going to show the ISBN numbers. All right, well, let's go ahead. Let's grab this command right here by clicking copy. Let's pull up our DEVASC terminal window here for the VM, and let's run that curl command. And again, curl is a pretty cool command. And there we go. And you can see it's giving us a JSON array, right? Which Python can parse and interact with by treating it like a list. And that, again, is the beauty of JSON, is that it's producing data in an output format that Python can just basically parse as if it was a native data type, right? Like it's either a dictionary or it's an array, and we've got strings in here, okay? So that is the real value there. And again, the curl command, if we go back up, you can see here, it starts right up here with the array, and then it comes all the way down here, okay? So that's the array. All right, so now we're going to list the books with the ISBN number. We want to see how that's going to work. And again, we're just still working with the GET request, which is just getting information from this API server. So here, I can turn that to true because the default is false. And it's interesting that they have a false here, right? Because the default is false. So if I did that, that's false. That's the default. So, but we've got true here. So let's click execute. And you can see now, take a look at the output here. Yeah, okay, so it added in the ISBN number, which is just another key value pair in the output. But here's what's important to notice is we've got this little question mark in the request URL. When this was false, right, that request URL did not have, if I execute here, all this had was the scheme, which is HTTP as our scheme, and it could have been HTTPS. And then you've got the path, right? And then you've got the API path that we're using, right? But there was no question mark. As soon as I start to put in parameters here, right? Like include ISBN equal true, we have the question mark. And the question mark is the delimiter between this element, oops, sorry, let me click down again. This element right here in our URL and the parameters that we have in here. Now, if there was another parameter, you would see additional information over here. In fact, let me give you an example of that. So if we come over here to the route get, right? So let's say I'm interested in, I want to get some route information from this MapQuest API. How does that work? Well, they give us an example over here. And you can see that this is the resource URL all the way down to v2 route. And so you can see right here, v2 route, and then what do we have right there? There's your question mark, which is delimiting this part of the URL from the query string over here. What are we trying to get? So we've got a key, and you would have to provide your MapQuest key, and we've got this other from value, which is Clarendon, Virginia, and we're going to this other location. Again, this is just a call to go from Clarendon Boulevard in Arlington, Virginia to Glebe, South Glebe in Arlington, Virginia. So, but the key is here is that this question mark is sort of like the separator here. And that's what tells the API, hey, I'm sending in a GET request, right? But I'm also asking, I'm also changing the query a little bit here from the default query. And I'm saying, ISBN is going to be true. So I want the ISBN numbers. And as a result, we get those ISBN numbers back. Okay, so now we're going to see what happens when you get a token to do a post. So if I was to collapse the GET here, you can see we've got a couple different kinds of posts here. We've got post books, and that's got the lock. You got delete books, that's got the lock. We've got books ID, using the ID for the book, right? So we could make a GET request using the ID for the book. So if you knew that ID 0 was the book that you wanted, you could put that ID in and run the GET request. But we're going to come down here to log in via basic, right? And this is just, what does that mean? Via basic. It's basic authentication is what that's talking about. And here's what basic authentication could look like, is we just put a username and password in when we get prompted, and we're going to get some information back. And the information that we want to get back in the response body down here is we want to see a code 200. I'm going to show you what happens when it's not a code 200, when you have a mistake in your token that you're using. But we're going to get back a token down here that we can then use to open this functionality for us. So let's click on try it out. And you can see we've got the little execute button right here. So when I click execute, we should get, oh, and it looks like, is it hold? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we get the little token right here because we've logged in via basic, right? Because there was nothing required. So it's here where I'm going to grab, and you're going to grab from Cisco all the way down to the end, but not the double quotes. You do not want the double quotes. And so this is the information we get back, is we get this token. Now, with this token, I can perform authorization work. And I apologize. I thought when I click the execute here, we would see the pop-up, but we click on authorize. And so now we're going to authorize ourselves to use these locked features here using this X API key, which is that token that we just generated. So let me paste it in. I'll say Control V, and there it is, but I'm going to take the 8 off the end. So this is not a valid token, because I want to show you what happens when it doesn't work as anticipated. So I'm going to click on authorize, and you can see it doesn't give us an error message of any kind. It just simply says, okay, API key authorized. So we've put the key in. Let me close that window there. Take a look at the locks. You'll notice all of the locks now are down, as if it's locked, not unlocked, so we can use it. And here's what we want to do, is we're going to use a post. We're going to create a book. So let me collapse that, and we're going to say post books, and I believe we're going to use, we're just using the post books API. So if I click on this, if we try this out, this would allow me to add, right? So when I'm doing a post, let me give you an analogy, right? A post is like if you were putting an order in at a restaurant, and the waiter's going to write down what you want, right? So we're going to give the waiter this information here, and it's as if we're like filling out a form on a website, right? So let's go ahead and let's click try it out. because it's going to kind of look like a form on a website. So I want to post, and I'm going to put it in JSON format, and we'll just say, you know, ID number, and they want us to use 4, and we'll come down here and we're going to add in Rick Graziani's. So we'll say Rick Graziani, and then we're going to add in fundamentals of IPv6 or IPv6 fundamentals. IPv6. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got it backwards here. Rick is not the title of the book. So I had my fields backwards there. So the title is going to be IPv6 fundamentals. And we're going to add in Rick Graziani as the author. Graziani as the author. Now, watch what happens when I click on the blue execute bar here. And it gives us back the response of a 401. So the 401 is unauthorized, meaning I provided a key, but the key is not valid. So what would I have to do? Well, I just wanted to show you that's what's going to, that's what's going to happen if you put the wrong code in there. So let me go back up here and let's click on authorize again. I'm going to click log out, put in a new key, which is my legit key. And you notice when I click log out, it's kind of hard to see, but all of the locks kind of went to like an unlocked state. So you click on authorize. Now I've put this new key in, which is a legit key. We come down here, and when I click on execute, what do we get? Response code 200, right? And that's what we want to see, because the HTTP response code of 200 indicates, hey, this has been successful. So now it wants us to put in another book. So we'll come up here and we'll say ID number 5. And we're going to roll over here and we're going to change the title to 31 days before the CCNA exam. So 31, I'll just put 31 days. And then the author is not Rick Graziani, it is Alan Johnson. So Alan, I'm apologizing now for not putting the entire title of your book in there. And so then let's click on execute. And we get a response code 200. So what this tells us, again, if you get the 401, it means that something's wrong with the key that you put in, right? Or maybe you put in the whole key with the double quotes. That's going to generate an error as well. It's only from Cisco to the end of the key that you need to put in there. So how can I validate that these actually got posted, right, by the waiter? He handed them into the kitchen, and the kitchen said, yep, we're going to cook these up for you. How did that happen? Well, or how do we verify that that happened? We just come up here to get books, right? And do I want the ISBN numbers? We didn't actually enter ISBN numbers in. So let's see what happens when I click on execute. Well, we get the 200 back. And if there's no ISBN number to display, that's okay. It just doesn't display it. But for books that do have the ISBN number, it is going to display those books. And so that's how we can confirm that, oh, you know what? Hey, this actually did exactly what we thought it was going to do. Right? So now we're going to get the book by a specific ID. So let's go ahead. We'll leave the ISBN numbers in there, right? And you can see that this is get books. So different call. So here's the API call we're going to be making now, which is get books, and we're going off of the ID, which is different from this API call that the server will perform for us. So how does this work? Well, let's just click try it out. Again, it's a GET request, so there is no key required here. So I click on it and it says, okay, well, what is the ID of the book you want to see? Well, let me put the 4 in here. Let's click execute. And again, you can see right here, there is no question mark in here because we're just saying, give me book 4. And it does, the Rick Graziani book. What about book number 5, Alan Johnson's book? And click execute. And again, you can see the curl command that would be required. You get the request URL, and then we get the response body down here in JSON format, and then we see the response headers, right? So it gives us a ton of information around that request that we just made. And this is what a GUI or web interface or a program like Postman is going to provide to you in a much easier and prettier format than if you were to run this with a Python script. But we're going to be doing a Python script as well. So using this get books by ID API call, this is the information that we would get back. So the final step in part 2 of this lab is we're going to, or I shouldn't say the final step, but one of the final steps is we're going to start deleting books now. So let's go back up here, and you can see we can delete books based on the ID. Now you'll notice that we needed that XAPI token, or that key that we're using in order to be able to do this. So let's click try it out. So this is how I could send a delete request to the API server. So let's delete, I think they want us to delete Rick's book. So we'll click execute, and you can see code 200. It shows us what the response body was. That's what was deleted. Here is the curl command, and that's what the curl command would look like if we were deleting something. And you can see there's that XAPI key is included. When we authorized, it kind of like it's holding in memory for us so that we don't have to type it or paste it in every single time here, right? So it makes it a little bit more convenient. But this is how that XAPI key would have to be used with the curl command, right? Here in the web interface, this is just we use the URL and we give it the book ID, and that book ID is now gone. How can I confirm it's gone? Well, let's come up and run a GET request, and let's click execute. And let's come down here and see, is book 4 here? It's gone. We have book 3 and book 5. So what if I came down here to books and tried to get the book by the ID number of 4? What would that return? Would it be a 401 that it's an authorization error? Probably not. We're going to get resource not found is what we should see. And there it is. We get a 404, right? Error, resource not found. And so that's the difference in some of the error messages that you're going to see. So again, as you're doing your reading in Module 4, pay close attention to the HTTP response codes and what those different values mean. What do the 100s mean? What do the 200s mean? The 3s, the 4s. So we see 404 right here. And we saw 401 earlier when we had the bogus key in there. But the good news is that it did exactly what we wanted it to do. It removed book 5. So what if I wanted to remove, remove book 4. What if I wanted to remove book number 5, Alan Johnson's book? So I click execute, take a look here. All right, response code of 200. That means, hey, it did what it was supposed to do. Let's go take a look here at the get. Let's say execute. And we should only see the original set of books that we had, 0, 1, 2, and 3, with each of the ISBN numbers. And so we're going to be using the School Library API along with Postman. Again, we pulled in MapQuest so that you can see that, yeah, MapQuest is just going to give you the JSON data as well. Or if you're really into pain, you could take a look at the XML format, but we've got the JSON format here. And it gives you a nice little explanation as to what a lot of these parameters are that you may put in there. And start thinking about the group project and what you might want to add in terms of features and functionality if you're choosing the MapQuest API Python script option. Because we do some basic stuff, but you're going to be required to add in some additional features and functionality. And that would happen through the advanced parameters. All right, so that is our School Library API, and that is a high-level overview. I should say high-level, but we dove in there. And so the final thing we're going to talk about is that put, post, and patch. I want you to think of put. Put is going to update a resource. It's going to create a new resource if it doesn't exist. And if it did exist, it's going to replace that entire resource with whatever the data is that you're using, right? So if I was to collapse these in here, the put, right, is this would be overwriting the data that was in there. And let me go ahead and let's try it out here. So if I say put, we'll leave it as, ID 0, and we'll put in here the title is, blah, blah. And the author's name is Mr. Blah. And I click execute. Let's see what we get here. So we get a success code, right? And what that put did, and here's the analogy. Think of, you take your car to the mechanic to fix a broken engine, right? The old engine's completely shot out. The mechanic is going to rip the old engine out and put a brand new engine in. So let's see, did the mechanic rip out the old engine and put a new engine in? And we do the, oh wait, did we get an error down here? Payload require, oh, did I not? I thought I clicked execute and we should have gotten a the ID, I'm sorry. I left the ID out, which is required. Apologize there. So I put the ID in. We'll go back to the analogy. There we go. That's what we're looking for. All right. So it should be a full rip and replace, right? So I took in my car. The engine's bad. We do a put request, and the mechanic is going to put a whole new engine into the vehicle. So we'll come back up here. We'll click execute. and there you go. And you can see it completely replaced the information that was in there, right? And that's our put request. And then the patch, right? We looked at the post. The post is kind of like the, waiter taking your menu, gives it the kitchen whips up the order. And then a patch method will do like a partial update of a resource. And so you can think of that as like, a painter touching up a painting or something like that, or, covering up some spots that they may have missed. So that is the difference between the put, the post, and the patch. All right, well, that is going to do it for this video tutorial on Lab 4.5.5, exploring REST APIs with the API Simulator, our library simulator. In part 3, we're now going to start using Postman to make API calls to that same library simulator. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope these videos are helping you out, and as always, I hope to see you in the next video.